Every individual desires to live a good life. Everyone wants to know what is good, to have life clarity, to have a purpose, to have peace of mind, and to undergo life without being flung about by externalities all the time. The truth is, much of what troubles us is all within. The world does not necessarily change to suit us, and it never takes it easy and slows down. It often appears to relentlessly seek us out in ways we'd never expect. The Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, realized that if you want a good life, you need to do certain things so that you can govern your mind and your habits. The Stoics did not regard philosophy as a theory only. They regarded it as a practical discipline that should be practiced every day. Their methodology is characterized by behaviors that can be practiced in a manner that allows for multiple repetitions until they become habitual. The beauty of Stoic behaviors is that they are actionable. They can be practiced in any time, have been done under every political regime, and done with or without money, and done with comfort or discomfort. Stoics do not see behaviors as contingent upon lucky events. Rather, behaviors are based upon what you think, your choice sees, and your actions. In this video, you will be shown 7 distinctive Stoic actions you can take to greatly enhance your life. Each action will be examined in detail with the consideration of possible ways to apply it today. These are not just theoretical concepts. Rather, they are tangible things the Stoics believed could take any person towards strength, peace, and integrity. Following the 7 Stoic actions, we will also consider a proper Stoic time frame for you to integrate these actions. You are not going to master these actions once and then never think about them again. Instead, we strive to truly include them in the way you think and behave so that they become a part of who you are. Now let us begin. Chapter 1. Master the division of what you control and do not control. One of the fundamental ideas in Stoicism is that of distinguishing what you control and what you do not control. Knowing the segmentation of what you control and do not control is the framework for all of the other Stoic actions. If you do not have this understanding, you will waste your energies fighting battles you cannot win, and avoid focusing your energies on areas where you have the most influence. Think of control as your thoughts, careful judgments, decisions, and actions. Those are entirely yours. Other people's behaviors and outcomes of events beyond your control and unfolding naturally through life are not yours. The Stoics did not indicate that we should ignore external factors. They indicate that we respond to existential factors with reason, while acknowledging that there is no suite of behaviors or actions that will ensure a control of the outcome. To employ this principle, focus initially on where your mind goes when you experience a challenge. Do you take all of that time wishing that the world was different? Replay the scenario/event/conversation in your head that never actually happened for hours at a time. All of this is an indication that you are focused on factors outside of your control. The Stoic way of responding is to then redirect your attention back to what you actually can do at that very moment. For example, if you did not get the job, you have no control over the positivity of the employee's decision to not hire you. You can improve your skill set with focused study, seek out a mentor to build your expertise in a specific area, apply to new jobs that align with your career aspirations, and develop a professional network to enhance your level of engagement with opportunities. If the weather shifts your plans, you can't just will the sun into visibility, but you can change your schedule. Consider a new activity or turn the unexpected change into a new opportunity for productivity or rest. That way of thinking is a discipline because external events offer strong pull for attention, which may be further compounded by years of inadvertent effective buying behaviors influenced by social norms. Our thinking minds instinctively resist limit and want to believe that, if some force, persistence, cleverness, etc., can be added to the mix, anything can be bent to will. This belief can create wasted energy and frustration when the friction of reality does not bend to you and can leave you feeling both exasperated and fraught. Training yourself to see the distinction of what is yours to contend with and what is not yours, the domain of chance, takes practice, reflection, and in some cases trusted others to interpret how you may have crossed over into the land of unlearned impossibility. Each time you accurately illustrate this distinction, you actively bolster your own ability to self-regulate. Once you have mastered this distinction, you have removed the frustration of creating a plan to chase the impossible and are able to turn your focus onto the areas that you can influence. This focus condenses your energy, gives you a steady path of continual learning, and provides you with protection by way of self-regulation against the slow and steady decline in will from repeated disappointment. This process allows you to begin to appreciate patterns to direct your choices or actions, which creates active decision awareness and behavior that is deliberate, calm, timely, and cogent. This deliberate action acts to reserve effort for actions that you can impact and build self-efficacy toward tackling challenges over time. This kind of clarity produces a sense of calm control over your own life. You stop dissipating your focus on an infinite number of variables you can't control, and instead, you devote your energy into focused high-value actions. In turn, you develop a sense of inner steadiness that does not vary with every change in external conditions. You come to see setbacks as a chance to fine-tune your method, instead of a reason to change course. One helpful way to practice this is every morning write 2 lists. On the first list, write what challenges, uncertainties, or potential disruption you expect to encounter, irrespective of its size or perceived significance. On the second list, record specifically what you can influence with each circumstance in terms of specific actionable steps you can take. Do not include vague intentions. Do not assert to try harder. For example, instead of saying, "I will try to assert," write, "Prepare for tomorrow's meeting for 30 minutes with focused notes," or "Contact 3 new clients by noon." Review these lists multiple times a day to keep your attention in areas where you can take actions. It conditions your mind to default toward problem solving, while providing you with a visible, tangible record of where your time and effort should be spent, and illustrating on a macro level how discipline translates into tangible growth. Chapter 2. Keep your judgments in check. The Stoics taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about events. This principle may be one of the more powerful ways of improving your life, since it provides you a direct way to alter your emotional state without needing to alter your context or the outside world. It draws the focus away from trying to change what is outside of your control and changes the focus to how you can alter your judgments of what you've just imagined. Your mind makes a constant assessment and judgment process of the continuous flow of events, providing labels such as good, bad, unfair, or lucky. Judgments are not objectively neutral. They create an emotional response, which in turn shapes your actions, your decisions, and the feeling of your day. Often, we assign judgment without hesitation based on habitual behavior, habitual values, temporary moods, or past experiences, which often go unnoticed. The Stoic approach to this automatic labeling process is to slow it down and allow yourself the opportunity to think about whether the classification you've made is truly accurate, fair, and helpful. To illustrate, if you were to receive feedback on your work, your initial mental reaction might be, "This is an attack." Such labeling and meaning to your interpretation could lead naturally to defensiveness, tension, and resentment. However, if you purposely slow down that labeling process, you provide yourself the opportunity to address that feedback. "This is feedback I can work with. I can improve." This is merely a single event, and this produced different emotional states. The words did not change. However, your reaction changed because your assigned meaning changed. When it comes to keeping your judgments proportional, it is not about stifling your emotions or pretending they aren't real. It is about recognizing that your emotions didn't spontaneously appear. They result from your meaning, and meaning can be modified, reframed, and trained through practice. Once you realize that emotions are not just uncontrollable forces, but signals you can assess and direct, then it will become possible to use emotion rather than allowing it to use you. The repetition, combined with pausing between the event and your judgment, cause the gap to get bigger. The ability and confidence to make a conscious choice and promote a response consistent with your values skills will only improve over time. Eventually, this skill can become an unconscious response, allowing you to be clear with your responses in even charge situations. You can also take the time to strengthen this skill with a simple process of 3 questions anytime you have a feeling of being provoked or disturbed. 1. Is my judgment based on clear, verifiable evidence or on unsubstantiated assumptions? 3. Is this situation actually harmful to my well-being or just unpleasant, uncomfortable, or inconvenient? 3. Looking ahead, will I remember or care about this event in a week, month, or year? By taking the time to work through these questions literally, you slow the course of automatic thought, keep your perceptions in proportion, and significantly reduce the chance that you will act in a way you regret later. Ultimately, this intentional slowing of your thinking gives you time to obtain new information, assess viewpoints, and consider whether the thoughts and associated feelings you initially generated fall in line with what you really value. In short, by eliciting an emotional response, you created an interlude that leaves room for reflection, where you can reflect on positive and negative possibilities against your own personal standards. The more you are able to practice modeling this kind of thinking, the more you will train your thinking to slow down, to consider things before having a reflexive reaction. Building on this process, you will eventually start to build a baseline default way of being that is stable, grounded, and resilient, that is less blown around by emotion, and less vulnerable to your own moods or the moods and prevailing circumstances of those around you. As part of your daily reflection process, allow yourself time in the evening to reflect on experiences of intense emotion influencing your thinking and/or behavior. Describe in detail what happened, what took place that stimulated you to have an emotional response, the assumptions you made in that moment, and the specific feelings that were or were not present for you. Then consider whether there was alternative framing that could have created further clarity, fairness, and alignment with your own guiding principles. Describe how the alternative framing may have shaped your emotional state, the tone of voice you used, and the behaviors you engaged in over the past weeks and months. Track recurring themes. Are there specific triggers that arise over and over again? Are there assumptions that always lead you toward unhelpful conclusions? When you can identify these patterns, you fit all of the pieces together and can begin to take control. The collection of reflections that comes out of this practice is much more than a diary. It is a living and original archive of your development, recording not just what you have experienced, but also how you have changed in your thinking over time. It is also a record of your ongoing improvement, of intentional refinement of your judgment. How your attempt to question and to reframe has enhanced your emotional resilience, made you better at strategy and decision-making, and improved your ability to live each day with purpose, deductive reasoning, inner peace, and levels of controlled force. After weeks, months, and years, you are able to look back and see pathways of transformation. Once frustrating situations are now met with composure. Once confidence-crushing challenges are now looked at with quiet confidence. The ongoing process reminds you of your commitment to self-governance, demonstrated with a visible example of how reflection becomes action and action becomes character. With each round of this meticulous review, you advance one step closer to the sure composure and internal fortitude that the Stoics asserted to be a mark of wisdom, one that can help you navigate your everyday existence and the most extreme of hardships. Chapter 3. Engage in voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believed you could strengthen the mind by voluntarily exposing it to hardships under controlled circumstances, which is a purposeful training designed to harden yourself before you faced hardships. The Stoics understood that there would be circumstances in life that would impose challenges on us that we cannot anticipate. They still understood the value of preparing the mind and body to meet challenges in situation of panic. This is a pre-rehearsal for hardship. If you only seek ease, the comfort you rely on is exposed and often weakens you and makes you extremely fragile and panicked when that discomfort is removed. Voluntary discomfort is an intentional decision to leave the state of comfort you desire and induce mild hardship for the reasons of increasing your mental strength and physical fortitude. This is a conscious, deliberate act for you to tell yourself and your body you are willing to engage in challenges to become stronger. It doesn't matter in what form. There are a myriad of forms. Esta revista de films. Mejor que dot can be done. Taking a cold shower to learn tolerance and reset your relationship with what is comfortable. Fasting for a day to develop discipline over appetite and prove that hunger is not an emergency. Walking instead of driving to develop discomfort. Tolerance and patience, or sleeping on a harder surface to disconnect from the constant expectation of comfortable. The goal is not meaningless suffering. It is a conscious statement to yourself that you can operate capably, efficiently, and with composure, even when that environment is less than ideal. Each act is a piece of proof that you do well with luxury in your life, but prefer that it is less than essential to your ability to live well, and that removing convenience does not remove your ability to act. When you practice voluntary discomfort, you will gradually shrink the surprise of real adversity and turn hardship into something familiar, manageable, and far less threatening. You train your mind to view challenge as not an emergency, but an environment you can traverse with skill. If you have already voluntarily chosen hunger for a day, your approach to unexpected scarcity will be with a far more steady mind, prone to be less fearful and anxious, and likely to complain less. If you have walked long distances purposefully, actively seeking to steep your conscious awareness in the complexities of discomfort, when travel plans don't go as planned, or if transportation isn't an option, you are more likely to view this inconvenience as a temporary setback rather than a catastrophe. Getting comfortable with even the very small discomforts consistently practiced becomes a powerful learning experience in how to adapt. This will accumulate in time into an inner library of experiences that reiterate over and over that discomfort is never a signal to curl up into the fetal position, but rather an invitation to adapt. An intentional demand to utilize your inner resources and demonstrate that resilience is a skill, not a gift, and a skill that can be enhanced by practicing through discomfort. The Stoics endorsed an active habit of inducing discomfort with the belief that it also leads reliably and directly to deeper gratitude by forcing the removal of comforts. Ultimately, when the previous comforts return, you reawaken your cognitive awareness of their value and renew your appreciation of them. When you eat a simple meal, it tastes more complex, more satisfying after fasting. The bed feels more restorative after sleeping on a hard surface. You appreciate the hot water of the shower after taking a cold one. You will come to see comforts as privileges, not entitlements, making you less likely to take them for granted or feel entitled to their presence all the time. This change in view shifts how you relate to pleasure. You can love it fully in that moment without grasping at it, and you need not worry about it later because you have shown to yourself that you can live without it. If you wish to warehouse this way of thinking in your life, select one form of voluntary discomfort a week and pursue with intention, plan, and aim. Begin with a challenge that stretches you enough to make use of all your mental and physical capacities, but is still something within your safe and sustainable reach. Maintain a comfortable amount of challenge, where you can sustain your consistency with repeated action without crossing the threshold into injury or burnout. As you build experience, include variations of challenges where both your body and mind are used differently, but with a few aspects of resilience to test. Continue to vary the kinds of discomfort you use to develop capacity for expansive strength, physical endurance, mental discipline, emotional patience, flexibility in uncertain circumstances, and even resourcefulness when faced with a lack of resources. Make sure to have a purpose before you begin your practice. Know what you are doing in a training context. Consider whether you are training tolerance for physical discomfort, to be calm in an inconvenience, or to focus on an objective while in a less than ideal situation. As you are going through the actual challenge, take the time to remind yourself that no matter the context, the single most important thing you are aiming for is mastery over your own perspective and relation to whatever situation prompts the discomfort. Notice the thoughts you have, the emotions you feel, and the physical sensations you notice when you are confronted with difficulty. Afterward, take the time to write them down and reflect on them. Use the practice only as a focused training target to train your steadiness and process of being deliberate, all while discomfort is present. Each exercise can be a living example that comfort is a preference and not a requirement. As you do these discomfort training over and over, you will learn and internalize that your true strength does not rest in the stability of your environment, but rather in the stability and adaptability of the control of your own detailed will. Ultimately, most importantly, an implied, therefore cultivated resiliency will permeate through to other aspects of your life to manage everyday inconveniences and meaningful challenges with easier acceptance, temporary discomfort, a composed mindset, and an unshaken will. Chapter 4. Focus and live with intention each day. The Stoics viewed time as the most valuable currency, above wealth and prestige, because it was the most finite. Once you use your time, it is gone beyond retrieval. Once an hour has gone, it is gone for good, which means you must take the time to divide your day into a discrete, usable, and actionable piece of time, and then thoughtfully so. They called for constant mindfulness about how you are spending your time and seeing wasted time as wasting your life. Living with purpose means reflecting on what you most care about at the most fundamental level, and then working to make each hour of your life reflects those things, big and small. This is not a surface act, but ongoing navel-gazing to clarify your values around all that you do, and building the discipline to keep adjusting your actions to these over time. It requires being rigorously honest about how you use your time now, identifying where you tend to habitualize your days, and what actions actually help you achieve broader aims. Living with purpose does not mean chaining yourself to an unchangeable schedule, but it does mean cultivating a conscious and purposeful relationship with your time. A relationship where you make choices for yourself rather than merely choosing being compulsively guided by habit or the requirements of others. Most people meander through their days, simply reacting to demands, unplanned interruptions, and distractions. The Stoics pointed out that this aimless existence makes life feel fragmented, unworthy, and easily disrupted, because there is not a stable place of intention to root for it. You can create durable structure to your days by choosing clear and specific priorities each morning and returning to them regularly during the course of your day, which you are always checking in with like a compass whether you're heading into unplanned or planned events throughout your day. Your priorities need to be deeply rooted to your core values and your long game, rather than simply chosen because they are convenient for your mood or desires, or provide short-term enjoyment. Choosing priorities in this thoughtful way helps you ensure that even the smallest and most routine of actions contribute to the overall vision of the life you are actively, intentionally building. When every choice is connected to a greater purpose, you develop a consistent and coherent way of living that strengthens your resolve, hones your focus, and fortifies your ability to remain steadfast in intentional direction, even when things happen unexpectedly. This also helps with decision fatigue, because you have already determined what you hold most dear, from which you can filter any distractions or noise away. For instance, if personal growth is one of your most important values, invest designated protected time to perfect your study, reading, or skill development, and treat it as a committed obligation rather than a bonus. Create a specific environment or availability to support your focus. For example, a quiet room, a specific time of day, a specific study technique, etc. If relationships matter to you, block time for authentic, undistracted connection with someone with which that can happen, even if that means simply being attached at the hip for a time of significance, and protect that time from accidental interference. Over weeks and months of repeatable actions, momentum is created, and an affirmation of yourself returns as someone who lives with clarity, integrity, and intentionality. Subsequently, you will create clear expectations of others and be training them to respect your boundaries and commitments, which is key to living deliberately. To make this a reality, every morning you should write down your top 3 priorities for the day. In actionable terms, you can detail not only what you are going to do, but how this will look by also identifying when, where, and how. Put these somewhere visible, a notebook, your desk, or reminders on your phone, so they stay alive in your awareness and can help guide your decisions as unexpected demands or competing distractions arise. In the evenings, review them honestly, asking yourself if you truly followed through on those commitments. If you did not, ask yourself why it did not happen. Write your observations about what got you noticed or what got you distracted. Adjust for tomorrow. Each day, you will get increasingly better at these potentially life-altering decisions and practice. Over time, this simple but effective technique will clarify your thinking, deepen your awareness of how you actually invest your time, and gain the willpower to close the energy drains away from low-value things, to focus on the people, goals, and principles that form a meaningful life of intention. Chapter 5. Keep desire and aversion in check. The Stoic argued that desire and aversion are the only two forces that move us as humans, leading us to make almost every choice that there is. Desire pulls you towards something. Aversion pushes you away from something. They are both valuable and necessary. But when either are unchecked, unfocused, or too simple, the often learning or practice becomes confused and unstable. Unchecked desire will cause you to pursue restlessly after the next thing, while not developing any place of contentment. Unchecked aversion will keep you retreating, prevent you from pursuing opportunities, and keep you on constant avoidance mode. The Stoic way is to abide by both forces to the degree you align both with reason and intentional choice. You want your desire to be towards pursuits you totally control, such as development of character, your action, and your learning. You will want your aversion towards things that are damaging to your integrity, moral failings, destructive habits, and poor decisions. This process of alignment becomes a filter, so you will not waste energy on things you cannot change, and fears that have no power over you. It safeguards you from the temptation of spending your desire on aimless pursuits, or responding to your aversion every time you experience discomfort. Finding that balance takes careful and disciplined self-awareness over time, practiced through careful thinking and honest appraisal. You will have to reserve time to properly think about how your pursuits are not only purposeful, but also on what you are pursuing for the right or wrong reasons, and not only on what you are avoiding, but even on what your reason for the avoiding. This includes thinking about whether each pursuit is truly contributing to development, resilience, and meaning, or if it is simply an entertained extension of cultural, social, or habitual influences beyond the parameters of your own conscious choices. Affinably, it is simply discerning whether desire and aversion both originate from a real danger in the present, or if it is only being stimulated by synthetic harm made larger by habit, past experience, or anxiety. In addition, it is not about just thinking about it on occasion. It is about training yourself to think about your desire and aversions over and over again, and then using your careful judgment to distinguish between value and what detracts from you, weakens you, or diminishes you. When desire and aversion are held in careful balance, there is a far greater chance you will not be easily manipulated by external pressure or internal pressure. Temptations are less attractive because you are less compelled to pursue unqualified promises of gain, and threats are less disconcerting because you have taught yourself to not acquiesce to fear of those things you cannot control. In this condition, you are acting from a place of considerable stability, free from being jerked around by impermanent values of desire or provoking fears. The Stoics would agree this exceeds even the momentary waves of liberty usually afforded to one who is engaged in horrible impulse or poor habitual thought. In this situation of balance, there is a sense of autonomy and sovereignty in decision-making and judgment, a calm, critical thinking space which force hardly soothes or disrupts, unless by sheer will. It becomes a cognitive stronghold, an elevated discipline and vividness by which you are able to respond to events in your life with intention as opposed to an impulsive reaction. For one to achieve such balance requires more than occasional thought. It requires a disciplined practice of self-reflection regularly. This is most important for those desires and aversions we maybe feel very strongly about. Consider setting aside at least 10 minutes every week, preferably the same time, same place, and same thoughts, to carefully and candidly reflect on your most strongest desires and aversions. If you desire to get value out of this process, I recommend you record them in a journal without any self-filtering and include all urges and impulses that seem completely far-fetched or trivial. For each desire or aversion, think about whether the desire or aversion was in line with your values, whether it was in your full control, what impact it had on your overall trajectory in life during the past week. Go beyond just naming them. Consider how the desires and aversions made you act, how it affected your decisions, and what it may or may not have done to your emotional state. Ask yourself if it was moving you toward who you want to be, or simply pulling you in the opposite direction. And when you can put patterns together, make an explicit note so you can track incremental progress over time and use that information to inform your intentions going forward. Intentional and methodical modifications. Strengthen the impulses that support your values and intentionally weaken those impulses that work against your principles. This is not a one-time adjustment, but an ongoing, committed process. A process where one review supports your next. Over weeks, months, and finally years, repeating this activity will hone your instincts and condition your mind with enough intensity that when there is a desire, there will also be some level of aversion. No longer just a conscious effort, it will be a part of your reasoning. Therefore, your reason will no longer simply direct how you live, but can also steer your responses to the twists and turns that the world will present to you. Chapter 6. Strengthen your discipline through small, consistent behaviors. The Stoics embraced this idea of discipline because it is the foundational principle of their abilities to behave in accordance with reason and virtue. It is important to realize that discipline does not come through rare moments of extraordinary effort. It is developed through a long process of sustained repetition and intentional behaviors. The Stoics realized that mastering the mind, and therefore living effectively, meant daily training and not just responses in reaction to stressful situations. Discipline is a muscle. It strengthens with intentional consistency and weakens with lack of use. The moment you begin to train discipline, you already have begun to make a part of your life structure, a block that supports all other virtues that once it becomes a part of your structure, becomes unshakable. Discipline is exercised by standing by the commitments we make to ourselves, even when the fluctuation of emotions, a surprise life circumstance, or the lure of comfort distraction offers up an alternative to the sense of commitment. It is the renewing choice of acting on the commitment you made before, without regard for when you will feel like it, and when the condition might be just right. Discipline is the ability to stay on the course of your choice when fear, doubt, or external noise suggests to go another way. Such strength through discipline is cultivated through growing patterns of even small but intentional behaviors on a daily basis. Every day contributing even a little bit contributes to the tapestry of your reliability and of your ability to trust yourself. These behaviors can be as simple as waking up at the same time each day, designating specific amounts of the day for learning, skill acquisition, scheduled exercise, or bouts of quiet time for reflection/planning. The focus is not on the volume or scope of the demand, but on the sustained nature of this demand that is carried out with enough consistency that it becomes ingrained, unshakable, and habitual. Each repetition piles bricks of persistence on top of each other, tightening up the brakes until you are ready for a more complex and weightier demand of steadiness, endurance, resilience, adaptability, and steady, sustained focus over great lengths of time. It is in this process that your mind and will are conditioned to act uniformly at a standard. If when energy is low, distractions are ever present in your environment, and distance is significantly displacing your progress or represent progress, you create a capacity to act at your standard, no matter what the moment brings. In addition to this sustained commitment, there is safety in this practice. The commitment will protect your will to make an effort in times of uncertainty, and that you remain consistent with your values when challenged from all angles for extended time periods. In order to maintain and solidify this process of discipline, choose 2 or 3 easy-to-do, small, specific actions that you can reliably perform each and every day. Regardless of your surroundings, these actions should either be directly related to the skills you are developing, which sometimes requires practicing discipline, building resilience that you are seeking, or living out values that you intend to bring to life in your living. Make sure that you have a thorough and painstakingly detailed record of how you are doing on a daily basis so that you can see progress in the learning of patterns, the true measure of your development against your values, and consequently, an effective, meaningful way of being accountable to yourself. This record can take several forms: written journals that capture your reflections, habit trackers that provide a visual chart for the action of consistency, scheduled reviews and retrospectives focusing on keeping the process a living and deliberate process. Make it a habit to continually revisit these records and use them to reflect on how every discipline completion is shaping your thinking, emerging decision-making, and capacity for meeting larger challenges. Celebrate and treat each completion as a motivated point of self-mastery. With consistency and persistence, you have begun to reinforce discipline as the qualities of your character and prepared yourself for larger responsibilities. Making sound decisions under pressure and navigating progressively complex problems with clarity, composure, patience, and unshakable conviction. Chapter 7. Protect your attention. Attention is a powerful asset you have, shaping both your mind and, ultimately, the quality of your life. In Stoic thought, attention is the portal through which your perceptions, judgments, and actions come, which means it powerfully influences how well you can live rationally. When your attention is fractured or frittered away on trivialities, your capacity for clear thinking will suffer, and you will increasingly struggle to do quality work. The ongoing erosion of clarity and focus will become evident over time and result in poor choices, squandered energy, and living symptomatically or reactively rather than deliberately. To protect your attention will require both sustained vigilance as well as intentional structured habits. Start by noticing when your focus is being interrupted. It might be from the outside by noise, messages, and unanticipated obligations. Or it might from the inside when your mind is restless, wandering thoughts, or shifting emotions. When you start noticing these patterns, you can begin to take back control over your attention by establishing boundaries not only in your physical environments, but also in personal habits. This might sometimes involve limiting the number of places that distract you, designing spaces that are designed to inspire focus, designing strategies that invite sustained engagement. The Stoics believed that attention was control and that it involved not only consistently returning to the task, but doing so with all of themselves, as if nothing else existed. There was no past, future, or compartments in their focus. When their effort moved toward the speed bumps of regret or distraction, they did their best to return their attention right back to the task before them. This was not without effort. It required concentration and a narrowing of mind to the present tension of the task, and therefore the full utilization of every ounce of thought and energy. Their understanding was that any scattering of mind across activities resulted in weaker products. So, they sought to get as deep into intentional focus as possible. Attention was not simply some type of state. It was an active discipline of the mind to make it do what it ought. They thought of this active discipline as a bridge between action and purpose, which in turn was ethically grounded and inspired. When the mind was completely directed towards one worthy, meaningful action, the quality of the work became deeper, more deliberate, and thus more enjoyable. In this practice developed mental steadiness that would allow them to remain calm and efficacious regardless of the conditions. In a current way of thinking, holding attention can mean many things, including many practical approaches to defend the mind against persistent intrusion on a continuous basis. You might silence every single alert during your best transit time for deep focus. You might physically put devices out of sight of temptation. You might consciously choose to avoid constant checking on emails, texts, or calls more or less too. That is, we can establish times with severe constraints around passive entertainment time so as not to take away from time set to work regarding those what are important to our work and reflection. Another approach is to make sure that you schedule uninterrupted blocks of work during the not uncommonly found 2-4 times during day that are also probably 1-2 longer on average, when your attention and energy and alertness will be at their best. This makes finding ways to recognize automated stimulus response, living and sleeping in circles with the pace in mind, easier if controlled. Some would argue to separate certain kinds of different work should be physically separated in separate places to allow the mind to connect each separated workplace with a specific kind of focus, using all of the body's senses to make associations to cue them into a sense of attention that they can choose to be directed with intention. This is more efficacy or energy to do, being with all things in motion, which is how we stay open, waiting for something to become motion, and we know a few things about organization. By intentionally applying attention this way, you are creating a cognitive state in which rationality, clarity, and deliberate decision-making will be far more likely to unfold. Without being constantly fractured, one begins to hold thought longer, to examine it more painstakingly, and to decide in measured response. Ultimately, having a system for attention becomes a reliable habit, a habit that gets easier over time as you are able to extract yourself from unimportant distractions or knee-jerk reactiveness to distractions. It may be prudent to begin by doing an attention audit for a minimum of several days in a row. Log in detail how you are expending your mental energy each day. Make sure to include both productive and unproductive use of focus and supply at least the time day, the context of situation, and what preceded any mind wandering that had you lose attention. By the time you get through assessing your focus, it should become abundantly clear if any patterns are showing up. Consider attending to patterns that repeatedly show themselves by taking precise and deliberate actions. For example, getting rid of all the clutter in your working environment, reading part of a classroom book about how to set up pedagogical learning effectively to limit distractions, or creating absolute fixed periods of focus, including how you might signal the beginning and end of periods of deep work, and using physical prompts, such as using phone alarms that indicate the beginning and ending of your focus periods, creating rules for technology usage, like being cell phone free each morning until a specific time, or at times throughout the day where you only check messages. After you have done your thinking and set up new practices, it is important to review the previous week every week to see how you are improving and what challenges you still face with respect to new practices. Embedded in this process will be to keep the discipline of attention purposeful and mindful. Reflection was an important part of development for the Stoics. They recognized it as a formal and structured way to examine the day as an opportunity to grow. For them, reflection was a distinct part of the day, a common practice in enhancing their moral and mental improvement. To them, the end of the day was never just an endpoint to rest, but more of an intentional reflection to review the decisions, words, and actions that had transpired over the previous hours. Through their thorough examination, the Stoics could see where they acted according to their virtues, where they fell short in achieving the intent of their virtuous ideals, where they were able to draw lessons from their missteps, where they were able to strengthen the habits of their virtues, and where they were able to gradually improve their behavior so that today built upon yesterday. Self-reflection is a difficult practice as it requires being truthful with oneself in honest and clear terms without distortion or deception. It isn't an opportunity to relive guilt. Rather, it is a process of honest observation and lessons learned. The questions are deceptively simple, but oh so effective. Did I think, speak, or act under my principles and values today? Where today did the emotion, impatience, or pride override my reasoning and good judgment? Did I ever act too quickly when instead I should have thought before I acted? How could I have responded with greater steadiness or fairness to difficult situations? These types of questions reveal both strengths and weaknesses and provide insight into the areas that need your attention. In bringing awareness to the strengths and weaknesses of your practice, you create the opportunity to address them and act upon them, rather than letting them become dormant and unchanged patterns. Continued reflection closes the gap between your error and your correction, allowing you to make better and more efficient corrections. Over time and repeated practice, you begin to see and become aware of the trends in your thinking, the patterns in your behavior, and the tendencies in your decision-making. This accumulated awareness means you now have the opportunity to embrace and reject unhelpful patterns before they solidify as habits and put you well off your long-term goals. You develop the ability to foresee situations where you may struggle and plan accordingly to offer a more deliberate, less reactive, and steadier response. This preparation builds your confidence in facing both foreseen and unforeseen challenges. Over the months and years, this habit of reflection deepens your skill in self-awareness to the point it feels like a more instinctual and natural part of your everyday actions, both personally and professionally, meaning you are more likely to act in alignment with your core values. Each reflection reinforces that you are an active architect in your own development, intentionally guiding your own journey and awareness, rather than being shaped only by intentional influences and the random events from outside you. Reflection not only helps to identify stuff that could use some correction, but it is also a means of reinforcing your heightened awareness of the qualities and behaviors that are worthy of preservation. An important part of progress is capturing what you have achieved to build on it. Use 10 to 15 minutes at the end of each day for uninterrupted and focused reflection. Pick a time and location that afford you the opportunity to concentrate free from noise or disturbances so you can devote your full attention to the reflection process. You can organize your review by walking through your day either in a linear manner, morning to night, or group-like themes, like personal interactions, decisions made, handling of specific challenges. For each situation, consider what are the elements you would consider successful and those that could be improved.